we know that we have a massive workforce crisis that's going to impact this industry. If we do not replace the 50% pilots, 83% mechanics, air traffic controllers, et cetera, it's not just going to have an impact on aviation, but it's going to have an impact on the U.S. economy. It's going to have an impact on the father that needs to fly on family vacations. It's going to have an impact on the businessman or woman that needs to travel to meet a client. It's going to have an impact on being able to send packages overnight. There's going to be a huge disruption in the way that we live our lives today if we don't attract the next generation to get involved in aviation and support their career.
C-Suite Standards, the show where we have the conversations that the corner office usually keeps behind closed doors. On every episode, we sit down with the executives, founders, and operators who are navigating modernization in real time. And we ask them to be honest about what's actually happening, not the press release version, the real one. So we're launching with aviation because no industry makes the leadership question more urgent, more complicated, or more honest than this one. And aviation is one of the most disciplined, most regulated, most operationally rigorous industries on the planet. My guest tonight has been watching that from the inside since he was 12 years old, washing planes to get seat time, petitioning the FAA to let him fly solo at 14, getting denied and going to Canada to do it anyway. He's testified before Congress, built a multi-million-dollar aviation business from scratch, spoken to over 60,000 students about what the industry actually looks like, and is now building the largest career platform aviation has ever had. Jamail Larkins, let's go.
Well, hey, Jay, you having me?
Man, I really appreciate you jumping on here. So just to get into it, for those who aren't aware of who you are and some of your past, really talk to us about how you got to this point in life.
I was a kid born and raised in Augusta, Georgia, always interested in airplanes for as long as I can remember, but I didn't have any connection to the industry. No one in my family flew. I had never even been to a small general aviation airport. My closest experience with aviation was flying flight sim. And it was something I was really passionate about. I did it every single day that I came home from school, and I did it for hours every single day. And after about 2 years, I finally got the courage to write on an aviation chat room and ask if anybody had any advice for a 12-year-old kid that wanted to become a pilot. And the Delta Airlines captain wrote me back, told me about a program called the Young Eagles program. And I took my very first flight with that at the age of 12, got hooked, and realized that aviation was going to be my way of life.
Understood. Now, that's a really cool mission that you've gotten to a point of. Now, you've helped people access over $20 million in scholarships annually through AviationStart. I want to sit with that number for a second, because what that tells me is that the financial barrier to entering this industry is so catastrophic that you had to build an entirely separate infrastructure just to address it. How bad is the money problem actually from your perspective?
It's pretty steep. I mean, if you go to most schools, high schools and middle schools across the country, and even if someone had an interest in getting involved in aviation, once they learn the cost, the average professional pilot's going to spend between $100,000 to $120,000. Even to become an A&P, you're looking at north of $50,000. Those are pretty steep numbers, so it makes it feel unattainable and out of reach for a lot of people. But there's a lot of resources that are out there to be able to help the next generation with aviation. Most people just don't know where to go to be able to access it, and that's why we created AviationStart, a completely free resource to be able to help people figure out not only how to access funds, but actually create a roadmap for them to be able to get to the left seat of an airliner or a corporate business jet or rent wrenches on their planes, whatever interest they may have inside of the industry, help them actually achieve.
Understood. Now, AviationStart's a great mission. Definitely love the ability to have people go to one location to really address those scholarships and to get into the industry. This is the coolest job that I think I've ever had the ability to be a part of. So it's definitely appreciated to see that there are people out there that are really helping people access that scholarship and grant money. Now, when someone can't access that money, when they don't find the scholarship, when the school ends up taking their deposit and sometimes closes, when they tend to lose logged hours, what does that actually cost a person from your perspective? Not necessarily financially, but what does it really do to them?
I mean, depending on how bad it is, it could be devastating. I mean, imagine if you went out there. Fortunately, I've only heard a few of these horror stories, but Imagine someone getting a $100,000 loan, going to a small flight school, and that flight school going out of business after, and they've only used a very small portion of it. One, you're still on the hook for those funds. Two, it could really end your career, or at least the dream of your career. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often, and there's a lot of things that you can do to prevent that from happening. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with AviationStart. We have a full career zone that gives people inside knowledge on things like that happening, how to avoid that, how to protect yourself while you're going through training. Those are all things that most people, unless you have a mentor inside of the industry, you're unaware of. So we're trying to provide the insider pro knowledge that people that have a mentor get access to every single person that wants to get involved inside of the aviation industry.
Understood. Now, that career center is a massive asset to anybody that's coming into this. Talk to me about that a little bit. What else is in that command center for you guys?
Everything that you could possibly think of. Let's just talk about pilots, since that's the first section that we created. But how to pick the right flight school for you. There's a lot of misconceptions, and you don't know what you don't know type situation. Most people don't know, depending on what stage of your life you're at, what your financial situation is. You might decide that you should go to a Part 61 school, a Part 141 school, a University 141 program. There's a lot of different options out there, but a lot of people don't know which one's the best option for them. So we help people identify the right training pathway and program for them based off their own particular situation. We help people identify and overcome potential issues that they may have. For example, aviation is one of the weirdest industries that I've ever seen. Very few other industries would you pay $300 an hour or $5 or more a minute to be able to get some type of service or experience, but not expect it to be something that blows your mind. And that could be a variety of different things. I don't think that flight training in particular needs to be a white glove service, but you should still have a very positive experience with it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of flight schools that don't provide that positive experience. And that's one of the reasons why we want to help people identify the right flight schools for them to go to, how to overcome medical issues, for example. Something that most people didn't even think about 20 years ago was the fact that you could be diagnosed with ADHD. And previously, 20 years ago, if you were, that meant you couldn't fly. You couldn't get a first class medical. That's not the case today. Anyone can get a first class medical as long as they're not on a medication. But there's still certain people that you should probably talk to ahead of time before you go for your medical examination. And those are some of the tips that people should just be aware of. You also help people figure out, how do I make myself look different when I'm going out there and applying for my first job? There's literally thousands of people that are submitting applications online today for most jobs all across the country, but you want to make yourself stand out. And there's a variety of different things that you can do that improve your chances of getting a callback. There's all sorts of different information like that. So everything from how do you pick the right school, your training experience, how do you save money, how do you become successful in the career field, make yourself stand out. All of that information is put inside of the career zone for all of the major aviation career fields out there. So pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers, airport operations, aviation business, basically you can name the field, and we're creating a resource that's going to help the next generation navigate the trials and tribulations and become successful.
And that's amazing. Now, you testified before Congress and named something specific on that record. A backlog of nearly 1,000 flight schools, Part 135 operators, training centers, kind of sitting in that FAA certification queue. Really unable to open, unable to serve students. And that was years ago. What happened with that? Did anyone fix the problem, and kind of where do you see it?
Unfortunately, it has not been fully fixed. The FAA is making strides to be able to improve, but there's still a long wait list. And, that was almost 10 years ago that I gave that speech in front of Congress. And although there has been improvement, there hasn't been enough. So hopefully over the next couple of years, we'll see some big changes happening inside of the aviation.
From your perspective, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like in that regard?
Uh, there's a lot of changes that are going to be happening. Um, let's take it from the general personal experience with it. I think a new segment of the industry is going to be developing over the next 5 to 10 years. In particular, eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. What people our age probably would think of the Jetsons, but the fact that literally this year, uh, Joby Aviation, for example, is going to be launching commercial air transportation utilizing eVTOLs in select markets across the country. You'll literally be able to pull out your phone, order an Uber that just happens to be an eVTOL, and that's going to be happening this year. 2 years ago, I don't think anybody thought that that would be a realistic possibility, but it's going to be happening, and that's just going to continue to grow and be placed in more cities across the country over the next 10 years. In terms of pilot training, I think there's going to be a significant amount of changes that are going to be happening over the next 10 years and as well. AI is going to be getting more involved with a lot of flight schools. I was just at a conference a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about the fact that some flight schools are starting to utilize it in analyzing maintenance issues, being able to predict what students are going to have issues at certain parts of their training, how to identify those problems and help correct this problem before it actually becomes a problem. I think there's going to be a lot of advancements on technology. Over the past couple of years, we've seen some really cool safety features like Garmin Autoland that's being put into general aviation airplanes. So as technology continues to develop, as aircraft continue to be implemented inside of it, as flight training continues to become more capable, I think there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years.
Understood. Now you just touched on something that's really important here. The eVTOL and UAM that's coming to industry here. How do you think that really changes the workforce and people that are getting into the industry just to be able to actually be a part of it?
I think the biggest thing is it's going to create more opportunity. Something that most people don't think about is the fact that CAE, one of the largest flight training organizations in the world, last year released a study that said almost 50% of all the professional pilots flying will be brand new to the cockpit within 10 years. So, I mean, if you have two people sitting inside the cockpit, one of them is going to be very new to the industry. About 83% of all the mechanics that work inside of the industry are scheduled to put down their tools within the next 10 years. The Federal Aviation Administration is looking at hiring a significant amount of air traffic controllers over the next 4 years. Pretty much every single segment of the aviation workforce is scheduled to have a major overhaul and a need for the next generation to enter it in the very near future, which is a big problem for the industry, but it's a golden opportunity for anyone that wants to enter the industry. You just have to take the initiative and take the first step.
Understood. No, it's a unique perspective. Those are definitely some big numbers there as far as people being able to gain access into the industry that's coming into it. Now, from a different side of this, you didn't just work the pipeline. You ran an actual aviation business, Ascension Aircraft, charter leasing, fractional ownership, millions in revenue. When you were hiring, when you were building that team, and when you needed to verify that somebody who they said that they were and could do what they claimed that they could, what did that process actually look like for you, and how did you actually know?
The biggest thing that I found is typically I like to hire people who I know. So we didn't do a lot of off the street hiring, so that solved part of that problem, but it still didn't solve all of it. We still ran into issues with some of the people. But I like to get referrals from people who know people that I know and I trust, and that helped eliminate a lot of it. But on a large scale basis, that's not possible. It's not realistic to be able to maintain that referral for all of the incoming team members or organizations. So something like what you're trying to do with Vector, I think is extremely important, because if you can be able to be sure who you're hiring has the right qualifications, that it's the right person, and have all that vetted, I think it's a huge deal. And I think it's something that will solve a lot of problems for a lot of people.
I appreciate that. So now, in a regulated safety critical industry, really that verification process is one of the most essential things that we're dealing with here. How do you see the next 5 to 10 years changing from a displacement standpoint as we discuss really that verified identity?
I think it's as I mentioned, almost 50% of all the professional pilots flying inside of the system are expected to be new within the next year. That's a lot of new people entering the industry. There's going to be definitely some loss of institutional knowledge at a lot of the big organizations across the country. So you want to make sure that you're hiring the right people, that their qualifications that they list on the resume are accurate, that they're not inflated, that the person is who they say that they are. So any tools that will allow a company to feel safe and confident about who they're hiring, I think is a big deal.
So, now, you were the FAA's first ambassador for aviation and space education. I mean, 14 years inside that relationship. You've also stood in front of Congress and told them about the FAA's relationship with small aviation businesses not working. I'm curious, how do you hold both of those things, and how do you face, or how do you be the face of an institution and simultaneously call it out in certain regards?
You know, it's definitely a delicate line, but I think one of the things about the FAA is first and foremost, it's a safety organization. It's meant to instill that the national airspace system of the United States operates efficiently and safely. With over 40 million people a year that get the opportunity to travel on the national airspace system, and that does not even include all of the general aviation activity that happens. It's a really complex job. I think the FAA is aware that there's some things that it does fantastic, and there's some areas for improvement. And if you look at the FAA leadership, you'll see that they are always looking to improve upon what they did yesterday, and that's easy to work with. It's not an organization that doesn't want to identify problems and solve them. So first and foremost, I always try to say the positive things that the Federal Aviation Administration is doing. And then secondly, I think what I work on specifically, the only thing that I really focus on from an FAA standpoint is trying to get the next generation involved inside the aviation industry. We know that we have a massive workforce crisis that's going to impact this industry. If we do not replace the 50% pilots, 83% mechanics, air traffic controllers, etc., it's not just going to have an impact on aviation, but it's going to have an impact on the U.S. economy. It's going to have an impact on the father that needs to fly on family vacations. It's going to have an impact on the businessman or woman that needs to travel to meet a client. It's going to have an impact on being able to send packages over. There's going to be a huge disruption in the way that we live our lives today if we don't attract the next generation to get involved in aviation and support their careers. And because that's what my primary focus is, I don't think anybody has an issue with that one goal, because I think it's a collective goal for everybody else.
Understood. Now, you just brought up a couple of very interesting things there. From a perspective that the FAA is always trying to enhance that safety and efficiency, what do you see is really the best way for people to, or from an individual standpoint, to get involved in really what that looks like? I know there's a heavy fear of being blackballed in certain areas, whether that's really just a fear in the back of people's minds. What do you see from an individual standpoint as the best way to end up trying to enhance that safety and efficiency from their angle?
No, that goes to every single organization that's out there, not just with the federal government. Whether you work at an airline, you work at a 135 company, you work at a flight school. A safety culture is imperative to having good operations there. A safety management system, making sure you utilize federal resources, NASA reports, for example. If you have an issue or a potential issue, I think it's important to disclose those things early on. And because all of that provides data. And when you have data, if you're willing to look at the data, you can analyze it and come up with solutions to train some potential problems that might be developing. But that all starts off at your flight school, at your employer, etc. So I think it's really not so much on the FAA per se, which FAA does have something to do with it, but it really starts off in the safety culture at whatever organization that you're involved in. And that's something that I highly recommend to students that are entering the industry. Make sure whatever flight school or CFI that you're working with is focused on a positive safety culture while you're learning how to fly. And then continuously, when you're going to look for your very first job inside of the industry, you're not only being interviewed by the company, you need to be interviewing the company that you're going to make sure that their safety culture aligns with how you want to operate and how you want to fly.
Interesting. Now, when you were inside that ambassador role as well, what did you say about the FAA or how the FAA thinks about workforce in the pipeline that's coming through?
So I
may not know.
I still actually hold the FAA ambassador role. In fact, we've been doing the past 2 years, we ramped up significantly. When I first started off the Dream Launch Tour, which is one of the FAA's signature aviation programs, we were doing 15 to 20 cities a year. This year, we'll be doing over 30 of those events. We'll have over 16,000 aspiring aviation professionals show up at them. And what we're trying to do is not only show the possibilities of what's available inside of aviation, but to connect people that want to enter the industry with the resources like scholarships and grants, as well as the organizations that can provide training for them. So whether it's an aviation-oriented university, a flight school, an A&P school, apprentice type programs that are available, all the different options that they can achieve to get the training that they need. And then lastly, connect them with actual employers where they can start developing a relationship with them. I spoke earlier about how to help differentiate yourself compared to the thousands of job resumes that are. One of the things that I think is a untold secret in aviation is it's not always what you know, but who you know type situation. And not from a nepotism standpoint, but one of the things I highly recommend when people getting into the industry is there's a lot of great aviation organizations out there, and volunteer with them. Be active, get engaged, because not only will you have the opportunity to learn about the industry, you'll have the opportunity to learn about your chosen career field, but you'll also have the opportunity to network. And if you meet the hiring manager or aviation department manager for an organization, and they see you working and you're engaged in one of their favorite aviation organizations, and you've developed a positive reputation in that group, when it does come time for you to be submitting your application and get a potential job, it will be substantially different if they've seen you be involved and engaged in aviation organizations for the past 2 years, and they've seen who you are compared to just someone that's submitting an application. So I think it's really, really important to get engaged inside of the aviation industry. When you do that, it goes back to the FAA question that you had, that they see that it's a very big problem for the industry if we don't solve it. But the FAA is doing a wide range of different things to help change that. For example, starting early on, the Airport Design Challenge with Smart Sky, which Smart Skies was developed in conjunction with NASA. But those two programs, for example, give Airport Design Challenge from elementary school all the way up to high school. Thousands of students all across the country are designing an airport from scratch, utilizing Minecraft. So a game that they like, but it's got educational curriculum attached to it. The teachers can utilize it to teach not only science, math, and technology while they're in school, but it exposes students to aviation and airport operations and all of the factors that go into designing an airport. Students get the opportunity to do field trips to their local airport, get exposed to airplanes up close and personal. Smart Skies gives students the opportunity to actually see what it would be like being an air traffic controller while playing the game as well. So all these things are designed to be able to expose students early on in a fun, creative way to various aspects of the aviation industry. So the FAA is very focused on sparking an interest early on. Then they're doing partnerships, like my partnership with the Federal Aviation Administration with the Dream Launch. They also have partnered with AOPA on their high school program. They've also partnered with PAA with the Young Eagles program, Civil Air Patrol. Pretty much any of the aviation organizations that are out there trying to get the next generation involved in aviation, the FAA is trying to highlight those opportunities for the next generation to get involved.
It's very impressive with the programs that are out. I mean, the Smart Skies initiative and the other programs that are being set up right now to increase that engagement. It's amazing to see how the industry is starting to change. And honestly, it goes back to that Jetsons conversation from before. So being able to see really that transition into the way that the industry is starting to operate with some of these initial initiatives that are coming out right now. Now, just to switch topics just slightly here, you've been in rooms with aviation leadership at every level: FAA administrators, operators, manufacturers, Congress. Most people in those rooms only really see one part of the ecosystem, and it seems that you've seen almost all of it. And so where's the biggest gap in how aviation C-suite operates today, and what the next decade is actually going to demand of them?
The problem with aviation, in my opinion, is it's a very complex operation. Whether you're running an airline, whether you're at the federal government, whether you're running a flight school, there are fires to be put out every single day that you go up to work. And unfortunately, a lot of the time the focus gets divided on those issues, where it's hard to allocate the resources to think long-term strategic planning. But the most successful organizations, in my opinion, do actually do that. And they don't treat it as a nice-to-have type situation. They treat it as a strategic operation in their companies. And the ones that do that, I think, are going to be better prepared for when you do have a shortage of mechanics. They're going to be the ones that still have a full maintenance staff. They're going to continue to be able to keep their airplanes flying, or their helicopters flying. So I think the biggest gap that I would say is a lot of C-suite executives look at workforce development as a problem that I know exists, but it's a tomorrow problem, and I've got today's problems that I've got to solve. And that's probably the biggest gap that I see here.
Fair enough. Now, with that in mind, aviation has really more SOP culture than almost any other industry on the planet. And really, the checklists for everything, redundancy built into every system, and yet that professional infrastructure underneath this workforce and that workforce development issue that you were just touching point on, it really doesn't have the ability to verify those careers, hold the organizations accountable, and protect the people moving through the ecosystem. It's not just, it hasn't been built out to a point that it seems sufficient to walk into the next, say, decade with. How does an industry with this much discipline, in your opinion, have a kind of that failure to build some of those systems underneath it? What do you think is actually going on there, and what do you think from your perspective could be better?
I think it goes back to, like I just mentioned, workforce development is tomorrow's problem in a lot of people's eyes, as we've got fires that we have to put out today. So that's the biggest issue. I don't think that there's much more to it other than the fact that there's other items that seem like they're more of a pressing factor that more people pay attention.
Fair enough. Now, I'm sure you've encountered some of the best operators in the space. Really being able to have the word out there, travel around from the AviationStart perspective, but also alongside that FAA ambassadorship. What do you think that the C-suite, that the operators that you were just talking about that handle this problem very well, what do you think that they do differently in order to handle that workforce development issue?
They're investing in their workforce talent. Signature Aviation is a great example. It's one of, or the largest FBO chain inside of the aviation industry with over 200 locations across the world. But they're investing in employee development. So, for example, you can work full-time at a signature location. You could be a line guy. You could be in customer service. But they're giving you resources to be able to further your career inside of the aviation industry. If you've thought about becoming an A&Q or a pilot, they're giving you resources to be able to take that opportunity from being an entry-level position and grow further into the aviation industry, whether it's at signature or not. And I think that's a great example of one of the aviation leaders that's really focusing on helping their employees grow. And by doing that, you have less turnover, so you have higher retention, and you have a really more capable workforce within your team.
Understood. No, that's a great mission that they have as well. I mean, I think that the connectivity and collaboration between people is one of the strongest things that we can do from a safety and efficiency marker here. Now, you've shared a stage with Chuck Yeager, with Gene Cernan, and with the last man on the moon here. And now you're talking to 17-year-olds deciding whether to pursue an aviation career. What's the thread between those two things? Where do you see the biggest touch points with the way that the old generation has run things, the new generation is operating, and where the two connect going into the future?
There's definitely some differences between the two. You know, for me, I remember the first time I got the chance to meet or even go flying with Jamail Larkins, or first time I shared a stage with Patty Wagstaff and others. They're aviation legends. It was a really surreal feeling. Um, for most teenagers probably growing up or young adults today, they have that same feeling, not necessarily for aviation legends, but for social media. So um, the people who grab the next generation's attention is definitely, in large part, different than the people who grabbed my age group's attention. But the common theme between all of those is someone who they can relate to, someone they can look up to, someone that's done something that they think is pretty cool and impressive. Um, so that's still there. For me, when I go in doing the Dream Launch Tour, one of the things I love to be able to show people is one of the best experiences that I've ever had in aviation, which was flying air shows. So imagine being an 18-year-old kid, literally had just graduated high school, and being one of the youngest airship performers in the country, getting the chance to pull positive 7Gs, to push -5, go 210 miles per hour, inverted a couple hundred feet off the ground, getting a chance to open up for amazing team aerobatic pilots like U.S. Navy doing. When you show that, that gives a little bit of instant credibility to some of the audiences that I get the chance to speak to. So I get the chance to grab their attention, and once I have their attention, I try to show them that I'm just an example of what can be done, but you can literally do this whether it's inside of the aviation industry or not. But I hope that you do give aviation a fair chance, because it's a really great opportunity. It's an amazing industry. The opportunities inside of aviation for a career are amazing, and it just takes people to get involved in.
Understood. You had touched base a little earlier about vector voyage, and this is something that we're hoping to solve kind of within that as well. But where do you see as the best place for people to gain some of that mentorship, aside from the Dream Launch Tour that you have going on right now as well, which is an amazing mission also?
The best way to gain mentorship, I would say, inside of aviation is take advantage of whatever aviation organization is on the line that you want to go into. For example, if you want to become a professional corporate pilot, the National Business Aviation Association is a great organization for you to get your feet wet at. It's a great organization to go to the annual convention where you'll get the chance to meet potential people who might employ you. If you want to become a professional pilot, going to organizations like OBAP or Women in Aviation, LPA, etc., NGPA, are great organizations for you to meet professional airline pilots as well. And whether you identify with any of those groups or not, the vast majority of them are inclusive, and they're just trying to grow the aviation industry. So I highly recommend to people, don't let the name of an organization scare you away. Make sure that you take advantage of any opportunity to meet people inside of the industry that you can. If you're looking to get involved in airport operations, AAAE is another great example. Pretty much there's an aviation organization for all of the major aviation career fields out there. And one of the very first steps I recommend to anyone trying to get into a particular career field is meet people inside that career field. And then one of the best places to do that is by joining some of these organizations and then getting involved.
That's perfect. Now, you started this at 12 years old, watching planes during seat time. That's impressive. Now, when you end up dealing with some of the new people that are coming into the industry, trying to gain some of these opportunities, where do you see the biggest opportunities for people to enter that aviation industry from a young age?
That's a good question. Um, Had I known that there was a lot more resources and opportunities I probably wouldn't have taken the most difficult path to be able to do it. Um, Young Eagles is a great example. You can not only take your very first flight with the Young Eagles program that you created, which almost 2.5 million people around the world have had the chance to go flying with the Young Eagles program, but you can also, once you get registered into their program, you can get a free private pilot ground school course. You can pass that. Once you pass that, you can apply for scholarships to be able to help pay for your flight training. The Commemorative Air Force is another great example. You can literally get engaged with the Commemorative Air Force, become a student cadet with them, get engaged inside of their associations, their chapter meetings, volunteer with the organization, and after 12 months of being involved, they're willing to give you a $19,000 scholarship that will fully pay for your private pilot's license while you're in high school. Those opportunities I wasn't aware of, but my biggest mission today is to help people discover that those opportunities exist and how to take advantage of them. So that's the first thing that I would recommend is find one of these organizations in whatever segment of the aviation industry that you want to get engaged in and get engaged.
That's awesome, and I definitely appreciate the insight there. Now, that's one hell of a story that you have, Jamail. The story that every person has really tried, who has ever tried to enter this industry without the right last name, the right zip code, or the right bank account has run into here. Now you spent your entire career trying to make that path less brutal for the next person, and that's one of the most respectable things that I think anybody has the ability to do. Really reaching 60,000 students, $20 million in scholarships, a platform built specifically so that the kid who doesn't know anyone in aviation can find their way in. So here's what I want to know, and really the last honest answer from you here, not necessarily the optimistic one. What's working about it, and what would you like to see change or gain higher traction on as you walk into the next few years with AviationStart and Dream Launch?
What's working about it is people actually taking advantage of some of these resources. Less than 2 weeks ago, I got a random notification of a student that attended one of our events in Texas, literally got inspired about aviation. He was a midlife career changer, and after getting inspired, he went home, utilized AviationStart's AI scholarship finder, found an opportunity, got matched, and won a $100,000 aviation scholarship that's going to pay for his entire flight training, from zero flight time to becoming a CFI. Being able to connect people with life-altering resources like that is a pretty cool experience, but the problem is the vast majority of people don't know that these opportunities exist yet. So the thing that I still would like to change and do a better job of is making sure that if there's someone that has an interest inside of aviation, that's aviation curious, as I like to say, we give them the option to at least discover some of these resources. We give them the option to connect with some of these aviation organizations and then put the ball in their court. If they want to have an aviation career that can make it happen, it's going to take some work from them to be able to actually execute on it. But if we can at least help people discover these resources, then we can make it a really good
That's amazing. Now, within that same point here, where do you see that the C-suite and all the various different portions of the industry can end up assisting that mission?
That's a really good question. There's a variety of different things that they can do. The biggest thing that I would say is they have to view it as not just let me be a good corporate citizen, but let me do something that's in my own self-interest. Because again, if we do have anywhere near the projected retirements that are scheduled to happen over the next 10 years inside of the aviation industry, especially small general aviation airports, are going to be hit the hardest. The airlines are overall going to be somewhat okay, but if you go to a local general aviation airport, whether that's an aircraft dealership, an FBO, MRO, etc., they're going to have the hardest time competing with the available pool. So I think it's extremely within their self-interest to try to get the next generation involved. And that could be as simple as having some of your team members that currently work inside of your organization to help support some of these various aviation events that happen all across the country. It could be as simple as having people go to local schools. It could be them writing a check. It could be a wide range of different things. But the biggest thing that I would recommend to people is start acting now, for they don't have to have crisis or anything about that.
Understood. Now, we've gone over a ton of very useful information here, and I greatly appreciate the input from it. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the community with as we roll this out that we haven't discussed so far?
Not that I can think of. Like, I want to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about the state of the aviation industry, where it's headed, some of the opportunities, as well as some of the challenges. I appreciate the open conversation.
Absolutely, Jamail. I'm looking forward to continuing that alignment as we walk into some of these new initiatives here as well. Now that's C-suite standards. This is really where the conversation starts. Jamail, thank you again for being open to having a conversation about it.
Thank you.